from the church at the top of the hill. In the wide compound of the Okafor family, joy overflowed. The family had firewood, goat meat pepper soup boiled in a black pot, its spicy aroma drawing the attention of hungry children. Women tied wrappers firmly around their waists as they moved about, carrying trays and spoons. Under the shade of a large mango tree, uncles sat drinking palm wine and arguing loudly about politics, their laughter mixing with the sound of clinking calabashes. A group of aunties sat on low stools, plaiting little girls' hair while telling folk tales. Children from the cooking area, their shriek with life. In the middle of this celebration stood Chinaza, a 14-year-old girl with bright, curious eyes. She loved her family. She loved the gatherings, the laughter, the smell of food, and the way stories filled the air. But as she watched closely, she noticed something unusual. Her grandmother, Mama Ngozi, was not laughing. She sat quietly in a corner, her eyes half closed, her lips moving as though she was praying. Later that evening, when the food was finished and the compound had grown silent, Chinaza went to her grandmother. "Mama," she said softly, "why do you all... Today you hardly ate. You did not even smile." The old woman, her face wrinkled like old leather, sighed deeply. She pulled Chinaza close and whispered, "My daughter, you are still young. One day you will understand. In this family, joy never lasts long. Pray, my child, never stop praying." Chinaza frowned. "But, Mama, what do you mean? Everyone was happy today. We are together. What can go wrong?" The grandmother shook her head slowly. "That is how it always begins. Happiness first, then sorrow follows. It has been like that for generations." Before Chinaza could ask more, her mother called her from inside the house to help with washing plates. She walked away, but her grandmother's words kept echoing in her heart. In the weeks that followed, Chinaza began to see strange events. Her uncle, the same one who had laughed the loudest under the mango tree, suddenly fell sick. One day he was strong, the next day he could not walk. The sickness confused the doctors in the city hospital. They could not explain it. Within 2 months, he was gone. Soon after, the family's farmland began to dry up. Cassava and maize withered before harvest, yet the neighbors' farms remained green and healthy. One evening, while fetching water, Chinaza overheard 2 aunties whispering. One said, "This is how it always happened." When they noticed Chinaza listening, they quickly changed the topic. They forced a smile and asked about her schoolwork. But the words she had heard sank deep into her heart. That night, as she lay on her raffia mat, she remembered her grandmother's warning again. In this family, joy never lasts long. Not long after Chinaza's dream, she found herself in a dark forest. The trees were tall, twisted, and frightening. They looked like arms reaching for her. The air smelled of smoke. Ahead of her, a group of men and women stood in a circle. Their faces looked stern. In the center of the sun rattled and glowed. Red like fire, Chinaza wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. Suddenly, one of the figures turned and looked at her. It was her great-grandfather, a man she had only seen in faded black and white photos. His eyes burned like fire. He shouted, "You cannot break this! It is sealed forever!" Chinaza screamed and woke up, sweating all over. Her mother rushed in with a lantern. "What is it, Naza?" "Did you see a snake?" "No, Mama. It was a dream, but it felt real again." But Chinaza could not close her eyes. The next day, Chinaza told her grandmother about the dream. The old woman's eyes widened. She grabbed Chinaza's hand tightly. "Do not play with dreams, my child. Sometimes dreams show what the eyes cannot see." "Mama, who were those people? Why did I see chained? One day the truth will come out. For now, just pray. Only prayer can save us." But Chinaza was not satisfied. She was young, but she was not foolish. She began asking questions. Some relatives laughed at her. Others told her to mind her own business. But slowly, she pieced together fragments of the family history. She learned that her father's father had died suddenly at the age of 35, so died young. The women in the family always married, but somehow businesses rose, but after 3 years they collapsed. Every generation carried the same story. And now, her elder brother, Ifeanyi, who had just entered university, had begun coughing blood. One evening, Chinaza sat outside staring at the stars. She made a decision. If Mama will not tell me, if aunties will not talk, if everyone is too afraid, then I will find the truth myself. I will pray. I will not let this curse continue. Her heart burned with determination. She was just 14, but she believed God could hear even a child's prayer. That night, she knelt by her mat and prayed in simple words. God, show me the truth. If there is a curse in this family, please break it. Help me. As she prayed, the wind outside howled. A dog barked furiously in the distance, but Chinaza did not stop. She prayed until sleep carried her away. This was the beginning of Chinaza's journey, a journey into secrets buried for generations, a journey into battles that could not be seen with human eyes. She did not know it yet, but the more she prayed, the more the hidden forces would rise against her. Still, deep inside her heart, she felt a quiet voice whisper, "Do not be afraid. I am with you." The Harmattan season had just begun in Umuwaka village. The air was dry and dusty, chalky. Chinaza's elder brother, Ifeanyi, had just gained admission into university and invited neighbors to celebrate. Family. Tall, intelligent, everyone believed would change their story. That night, after the feast, Chinaza overheard her mother talking with her aunt in low tones. "Finally, our family did. God has remembered us," her mother said. Her aunt sighed deeply. "I pray this joy lasts. You know how things all." Chinaza's heart like a sharp thorn. She could not forget them. A few months later, looking pale. His once strong voice was weak. His eyes had dark circles around them. At night, Chinaza could hear him coughing in his room. It was malaria, then typhoid. But the medicines did nothing. He grew weaker. Sometimes he would cough until blood stained his handkerchief. The family grew worried. The same whispers Chinaza had heard before began again. Her grandmother shook her head and muttered prayers under her breath. The aunties exchanged fearful glances. Chinaza's mother cried quietly at night, hiding it from the children. One evening, as Chinaza fetched water, she heard two women in the neighborhood gossiping. "That Okafor boy has fallen sick. It has started again, grandfather." "Yes," the other replied. "It is their pattern, their curse." Chinaza's heart pounded in her chest, a heavy bucket of water on her head. Their words confirmed what her grandmother had said. This was a pattern, a cycle that had swallowed her family for generations. That night, when she entered Ifeanyi's room, she found him sitting weakly on the bed, staring at his books. His eyes were full of tears. "Naza," he said softly, "I worked so hard to get into the university. I wanted to make Mama proud. But look at me now. I don't know if I will make it." Chinaza sat beside him and held his hand. "Don't talk. You must make it. We will pray. God will help us." Ifeanyi forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed his fear. As days passed, Chinaza noticed more things. Her cousin Adazi had married a wealthy trader in Lagos, but within a year she returned home, crying, her marriage broken. Another cousin's shop in the market collapsed after thieves stole everything, just 3 years after he opened it. The story repeated itself like a drum beat. She found it hard to concentrate. The words of her teachers sounded far away. Her mind was full of questions. Why was her family different? Why did happiness always turn to sorrow? Why did success end in sudden failure? She could not shake the feeling that something dark followed them everywhere. One Sunday after church, she decided to visit Pastor Emmanuel secretly. He was a humble man, not too old, not too young, known for his past stretched like long fingers. Suddenly a dark figure appeared in the corner. Remembered the pastor's words. "Against you!" The figure moved. The air became icy cold, leaving the room silent. Chinaza collapsed on her mat, exhausted but filled with peace. The next night, the attack returned. This time, in her dream, she found herself back in the dark forest. The men and women in red and black stood around the glowing chain. They chanted louder, their voices rising like thunder. Her great-grandfather lifted a staff and pointed at her. "You have no right to be here. You are too small. You cannot fight us." Chinaza's knees shook, but she lifted her voice and shouted, "I may be small, but my God is mighty. His blood speaks louder than your covenant." Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the forest, shining brighter than the fire. The chain rattled violently, as though something invisible was pulling at it. Chinaza woke up with a shout, her heart pounding. For the first time, she felt victory. On the third night of her fast, she dreamt again. This time, she saw her brother Ifeanyi tied with ropes, surrounded by dark creatures. They laughed as he coughed. "No!" She rushed forward, trying to untie him, but the creatures pushed her back. She fell to the ground, weeping. Then she remembered the name above all names. She lifted her hands and shouted, "Jesus!" A blast of light filled the dream. The ropes on Ifeanyi snapped, and he fell into her arms. When Chinaza woke up, it was morning. She ran to her brother's room. To her surprise, he was in a daze. His cough had weakened, and color was returning to his cheeks. Their mother over and over. The whole family was amazed. Some believed it was just medicine finally working, but Chinaza knew better. She had seen it in the spirit. The chains were beginning to break, yet she also knew the battle was not completely over. The curse had been challenged, but now the enemy would fight harder. Still, she felt no fear. She knew that light had entered her family, and darkness would not win day and night, fasting.
Then he reached into his pocket.
And then silence. Baba. T sat quietly, tears in his eyes. He whispered, "Rest well, my son. Your story is not over." Far away, in the Adeyemi mansion, the wind howled against the windows. A strange feeling crept into the house. Vanessa shivered for no reason she could explain. It was the first. A strange wind swept through the streets. People in the neighborhood of the Adeyemi mansion spoke of hearing faint cries at night, cries that sounded like pain and sorrow. In the Adeyemi mansion, Vanessa tossed and turned in her sleep. She dreamt of a young man standing in the rain, his eyes sad but steady. "Why are you here?" she asked in the dream. The young man didn't answer. He only whispered, "Truth does not die." Vanessa woke up with a start, her heart pounding. She told herself it was just a nightmare, but it was only the beginning. The first sign of the trouble came with business. Chief Adeyemi's biggest investment, a luxury hotel chain, one of its main branches. The insurance company refused to cover the damages, claiming fraud. Soon after, another company, under his name, faced a huge scandal. Stocks dropped overnight. Chief Adeyemi sat in his office, sweating as he read the reports. "How is this possible?" he asked his secretary. She avoided his eyes. "Sir, people are saying maybe it's spiritual." "Spiritual?" Chief Adeyemi scoffed. "Nonsense. These are just bad business moments. We will recover." But they didn't recover. At home, Mrs. Adeyemi noticed strange things. At night, doors creaked open by themselves. The sound of footsteps echoed in empty hallways. Sometimes she heard faint knocking on her bedroom door, only to open it and find nobody there. One night, while walking to the kitchen for water, she saw something that froze her blood. Stood at the far end. His clothes were ragged, his head slightly bowed. "Who's there?" she shouted. The man slowly looked up. His face was familiar, a face she had seen in court years ago. It was Daniel. Mrs. Adeyemi screamed and ran back to her room. When she told Chief Adeyemi, he dismissed it as stress. But fear had already begun to take root in the house. Vanessa's nightmares grew worse. Every night, she saw Daniel in her dreams. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he asked the same question. "Why did you lie?" She started losing weight. Her friends stopped visiting because she looked pale and restless. One evening, while sitting alone in her room, she heard a whisper. "Vanessa." She turned sharply, but the room was empty. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Vanessa." She screamed and ran to her parents' room, shaking. "It's him! It's Daniel!" Her father shouted, "Stop this madness! There is no ghost!" But even he couldn't explain the shadows he sometimes saw moving along the walls. As weeks passed, their businesses collapsed one after the other. Bank accounts were frozen. Investors pulled out. The media began as the biggest scandal looked down on refused to help them. Former friends avoided their calls. One by one, their properties were sold to pay debts. Eventually, the family's mansion was seized. The Adeyemis, once the most powerful family in Linton, found themselves homeless. They rented a small old house at the edge of the city. Life became hard. Chief Adeyemi, who once controlled millions, now struggled to buy food. Vanessa barely spoke. She sat in her room, haunted by guilt and fear. One stormy night, she heard the familiar voice again. "Vanessa?" She turned, and there he was. Daniel standing at the foot of her bed. Tears filled her eyes. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to die." The truth must be known. And then he vanished. Vanessa fell to the floor, sobbing. She knew what she had to do. The storm raged outside as her mind replayed the image of... She could no longer pretend it was her imagination. The guilt that she had buried for years was now too heavy to carry. She knew she had destroyed an innocent life. The next morning, Vanessa called her parents into the small living room of their rented house. "Mom, Dad, I have something to say. Mrs. What is it?" Vanessa's voice shook. "It's about Daniel. The boy I accused. I lied. He never touched me. I made up the story because he ignored me that day in the park." The room fell silent. Chief Adeyemi stared at his daughter, his mouth slightly open. "Vanessa, do you understand what you are saying?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I killed him, Daddy. My lie put him in prison. And now, he's dead." Mrs. Adeyemi gasped and covered her mouth. Chief Adeyemi's pride cracked for the first time. He buried his face in his hands. "All this time, all this suffering, we brought it on ourselves." Vanessa nodded. "He comes to me in my dreams. He wants the truth to be known. I can't sleep until I confess." The next day, the family went to the police station. The officers were shocked to see the Adeyemis in their worn clothes, looking nothing like the powerful family they once were. Vanessa told her story in full. She admitted her lie. The news spread across the city like wildfire. People were outraged. Some cursed the Adeyemis for destroying an innocent man's life. Others saw it as justice finally catching up with them. Daniel's mother, Mama Grace, was called to the station. She came, her face lined with years of pain. When she heard Vanessa's confession, she broke down in tears. "My son, he died in prison. He cried for justice. And now the truth comes too late." Vanessa knelt before her. "I am so sorry, Ma. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to tell the truth." Mama Grace looked at her for a long moment. "Child, forgiveness is God's work, but you will live with the weight of your actions. May God have mercy on you." That night, in their small house, the Adeyemis sat together in silence. For the first time in years, the air felt different. There was still pain, still shame, but the heavy presence in the room was gone. Vanessa slept without nightmares for the first time. Chief and Mrs. Adeyemi, though still broken, felt a strange sense of peace. Far away, in the unseen world, Daniel's spirit stood quietly. His face was calm. His truth had been heard. He whispered, "Justice is not revenge. Let them learn." And with that, he faded into the light. Months later, the Adeyemis began rebuilding their lives. They no longer lived in luxury. They no longer looked down on others. They learned humility the hard way. Vanessa began volunteering at a community center, speaking to young people about the dangers of lies and abuse of power. Chief Adeyemi started a foundation to support wrongly accused prisoners. Their lives were never the same, but they lived with a new understanding. The cry of the innocent never goes unheard. Power is a gift, not a weapon. Use it to protect, not to destroy. For the cry of the innocent will always